The relationship between India, the United States, and Russia has always been complex, but in the past decade, this triangle has become one of the most defining stories of global trade, energy, and geopolitics. Our journey begins in 2018. The United States, under the Trump administration, imposed global tariffs of 25% on steel and 10% on aluminum under Section 232, citing national security. India, one of the world's top steel exporters, was suddenly hit. In retaliation, New Delhi announced counter-duties and dragged Washington to the World Trade Organization. This was the first major spark in what would become a long cycle of trade friction. Then, in June 2019, Washington withdrew India from the Generalized System of Preferences, or GSP. This program had allowed Indian exporters duty-free access to the American market for over $5.6 billion worth of goods annually. Losing GSP meant higher costs for India's small and medium enterprises, especially in textiles, engineering goods, and handicrafts. The move strained not just trade but trust. Meanwhile, another shift was happening in energy. India had long relied on Iranian crude, buying nearly 10% of its oil from Tehran. But in May 2019, the US ended sanctions waivers, forcing India to cut Iranian imports to zero. Overnight, New Delhi had to scramble for alternatives, paying higher prices for Middle Eastern grades. Fast forward to February 2022. Russia invades Ukraine. The West responds with sweeping sanctions and a price cap on Russian oil set at $60 per barrel. For India, the world's third largest oil consumer, the choice was stark. Pay global benchmark prices or buy discounted Russian crude. New Delhi chose pragmatism. By 2024, Russian oil had surged from under 1% of India's crude basket to more than a third, according to multiple energy trackers. Refiners saved billions, but Washington saw red. By mid-2023, both sides tried to patch things up. India and the US agreed to terminate 6 WTO disputes. Washington restored tariff exclusions for some Indian steel products, while New Delhi rolled back certain retaliatory duties. There was hope for a reset, but the optimism didn't last. In August 2025, the United States imposed a fresh 25% tariff on Indian goods, explicitly citing India's continued oil trade with Russia. For many items, the combined duty now stood at 50%. Indian exporters of clothing, footwear, and gems suddenly faced a crisis. Markets reacted instantly. On August 26, the Nifty 50 recorded its worst single-day drop in 3 months. The Sensex tumbled further as the tariffs officially kicked in on August 27. Analysts warn of a direct hit to export earnings and job-intensive sectors. And then, another shock. On September 26, Washington announced a 100% tariff on branded and patented pharmaceuticals, effective October 1. While most of India's $25 billion pharma exports to the US are generics, uncertainty around branded generics spooked investors. The Nifty Pharma index slid more than 2% in one day. Companies like Sun Pharma and Dr. Reddy's faced sharp intraday losses, even as analysts later argued the risk might be overstated. Caught between sanctions and tariffs, India has been trying to carve out space. New Delhi has quietly told Washington, "Allow us to buy from Iran or Venezuela again, and we will reduce our dependence on Russia." But for now, the US sanctions regime remains rigid. The economic fallout is undeniable. In August, foreign institutional investors pulled billions from Indian equities. Export-heavy sectors were worst hit. Apparel makers warned of shrinking orders. Pharma executives scrambled to reassure investors. And for ordinary investors, volatility became the new normal, with back-to-back monthly declines in both the Nifty and Sensex. So what is the way out of this triangle of tension? Experts suggest a multi-pronged approach. First, India could formally tighten compliance with the G7 price cap, ensuring every Russian barrel imported stays below $60. This would ease Washington's fears without shutting off India's energy lifeline. Second, New Delhi could lay out a time-bound plan to diversify. Over 12 to 18 months, Indian refiners could gradually reduce Russian crude from 1/3 of imports to closer to 1/4, replacing the difference with Middle Eastern grades and potentially Venezuelan barrels if sanctions ease again. Third, India could negotiate what some call an oil for tariffs mini deal. In exchange for this diversification, Washington could roll back the additional 25% tariffs on specific labor-intensive Indian exports. This would protect Indian jobs while giving the US a sanctions policy win. Fourth, clarity is urgently needed on pharma. India must secure a written carve-out for generics and push for special exemptions for complex generics and biosimilars tied to US drug shortage lists. This ensures affordable medicine for American patients while safeguarding India. Fifth, New Delhi can revive talks on preferential trade access, either through GSP renewal or new program tied to compliance benchmarks. This would help small exporters who are most vulnerable. And finally, at home, India must cushion the blow. Faster GST refunds, credit lines for exporters, and targeted relief for apparel, footwear, and gems could buy time until negotiations deliver results. In parallel, India should expand LNG contracts with the US, increase defense co-production, and use projects like the Chabahar port strictly for connectivity, not crude. Each step builds political goodwill and strengthens India's hand. This is not about choosing Washington over Moscow, or Moscow over Washington. It is about striking balance in a world where trade, politics, and energy are deeply entangled. The story is still unfolding. But one thing is clear. Every decision in Washington, Moscow, or New Delhi sends ripples across Indian markets, Indian factories, and Indian households. And how India manages this delicate triangle may well define the next chapter of its economic rise.